Welcome to the Orion Sportscast Podcast, the most refreshing analysis, insight, and opinions in the world of sports. Here are your hosts, Josh Egan and Brandon
We're here with
Waterhouse.
another interview today. We are joined, I'm really excited about this one, actually. We're joined by Mike
Look at the
Ross.
backdrop, I mean.
Yeah. Big Leafs backdrop. Let's hear about it. Mike, who are you? What do you do? Tell us about yourself.
My name is Mike Ross. I'm the public address announcer for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'm also one of the morning show contributors on AMI TV and AMI Audio, which is Accessible Media Inc. So in one way or another, I almost always have at least one thumb in a sports pie somewhere.
Perfect.
I love that.
So for people who might not know what that job consists of, what does a public address announcer do?
Well, in my case, it's a little bit different, in every market. So, but generally speaking, a public address announcer is the voice that you hear in the arena or in the stadium when you go to a hockey game or a football game or whatever sporting event that's going on. In some markets, in some sports, you're also sometimes sort of the fan engagement person and the person who is charged with pumping up the crowd and running contests and things like that. That's not the case with me and the Maple Leafs. We've got a couple of great in-house hosts in D. Emmanuel and Scott Willits, and they do a fantastic job of running the contesting, running all the hype shows within our games. So my role is pretty simple. I introduce the starting lineups. I introduce the officials, the national anthem singer, and announce goals and penalties. And
Nice.
And that's the big part of the job. That's the one that requires, I think, the most enthusiasm, and certainly is what sort of generates most reaction from the fans.
So, Mike, I want to know what kind of sparked, maybe it didn't get sparked as a kid. Maybe it's a passion you found later on in your life, but what made you want to pursue this career path? And was there something while you were a child that sparked this interest?
I think I was always kind of interested in media, and I was a big sports fan. So growing up cheering for the Leafs, Paul Morris was a voice that you heard all the time at Maple Leaf Gardens. If you watched, any New York Yankee games, Bob Shepard, the really long time voice of the New York Yankees. These were just iconic voices at a time when, public address announcers were, I think, a little bit more prevalent on broadcasts. You didn't have the level of necessarily or the detailed analysis that you have now in games. So I think there was a little bit more room to breathe in those broadcasts. And as such, there was a little bit more presence of the arena voice than there is now. But certainly for me, in listening to people like Paul Morris and people like Bob Shepard, I could tell that these were important roles for those teams. And the fact that I was always interested in radio and audio and just voice work, it seemed like a natural combination to put that with my love of sports.
So outside of the PA announcing, you do something with AMI. I might have said that correctly, AMI. What does that consist of, and what's that all about? Because I read a little bit about it, but I want to hear it from you.
So AMI is Accessible Media Inc., and AMI started as a company called VoicePrint, which years and years and years ago was a reading service for blind and partially sighted Canadians. So they would literally have people, professional readers, reading the newspaper, reading articles, reading magazine articles, sometimes reading grocery flyers and the store flyers. And these broadcasts were aired over television on a blank screen. So basically, it was an audio reading service on television for blind and partially sighted Canadians. Over time, they started developing a little bit more programming and a lot of it was sort of long term or long form programming and documentary programming. And just over 5 years ago, they decided that they wanted to jump into the world of live broadcasting. They'd never done live broadcasting. Everything they always did was pre-recorded stuff. And so they wanted to diversify a little bit. And it was a bit, it was sort of modernizing the company, but it was also allowing it to be more relevant and timely for their audience. And so they decided that they were going to start by creating a live morning show.
Okay.
And I had just ended I was at NHL radio for 10 years. That ended in October of 2015. And within about a month of that, I got a call from somebody I knew at AMI saying, hey, listen, we've got some ideas. We'd like to run them by you. And I got together with them. We had some meetings, and they asked if I wanted to be the inaugural host of that show and help them sort of build up the live broadcasting presence. And I jumped at the opportunity, and we grew it. The show is now called Now with Dave Brown. Dave Brown is the host now. It is not only on the audio channel, but it's also simulcast on television right across the country. Wow. And we've managed to grow the live broadcasts to not just the morning show, but also now 3 or 4 other shows that are done. I also do the news show every morning called The Gazette. But there are a number of other live shows that are now running every day, Monday to Friday on AMI audio and or AMI TV. And, you know, we've grown tremendously. It's now a channel that runs shows that get good ratings across the country. And for me, it's easily the most fulfilling broadcasting I've ever done.
That's
what
awesome.
we do every day really means something to our audience. It's not anything they can find anywhere else. They may hear a story that we talk about on CBC a month after we've talked about it, but we do everything first and foremost through the lens of accessibility. And we look at disability issues and accessibility issues, and certainly things that affect blind and partially sighted Canadians. And nobody else does that 24/7. So it's just a thrill to be a part of it. And going into my 6th year at AMI,
awesome.
you know, I couldn't have asked for a better sort of transition out of NHL radio into some other broadcasting with AMI.
So that's not, as I understand, that's not the only work you've done with blind and partially sighted listeners. You've done some work with blind hockey. Am I correct?
Yeah, the Canadian Blind Hockey Association has had a relationship with AMI for as long as I've been there. In fact, even it started even before I was there. But we broadcast the Canadian National Blind Hockey Championship every year. Unfortunately, of course, because of the pandemic last year, we had to skip it. It didn't happen. Hoping to have it later on in 2021 this year. But I've been thrilled to be a part of their event every year, both from a broadcasting standpoint, where I've been part of the play-by-play crew, but also getting an opportunity to do a little bit of announcing, introducing the opening ceremonies for them, the closing ceremonies, their award ceremonies, and also have had great opportunity to cover the Canadian National Golf Championship in British Columbia in 2018 or 2019. So my involvement in blind sports, but also adaptive sports, has been just tremendous for me. I've really enjoyed it. I've met some amazing athletes, and you know, it's quite something to walk into an arena like that and just close your eyes, and other than the sound of the metallic puck that's used in blind hockey, it's a hockey game. And it's just another way for Canadians who love the game to get involved in the game. And I love that.
Yeah, it sounds like I think of blind hockey and I go, okay, so what's the difference here? Are there different rules? Like obviously we know the puck will make a noise. So are there any other rules that are
We
different?
love the specifications of the game.
Yeah. So first and foremost, you've got smaller nets. So the goalies don't have to cover nets that are regulation size. They're about half the size height wise of a regulation net. The other things that are a little bit different, first of all, the positioning of the players is determined by your percentage of vision. So the players with the most percentage of vision are playing at forward, and the goaltenders are the ones with the least amount of vision. And that just allows for, the forwards who are playing with the most vision are the ones that are also skating the fastest. And I think that's an adaptation to deal with the speed of the game and allow for a lot of that speed to happen in an area of the ice where it's going to be the 6 best skaters usually, or the 6 players with the most vision, so as to avoid collisions if there are going to be any. The other thing is when a team comes into the offensive zone onside with the puck, they have to make at least one pass to a teammate before they can take a shot on net. And what that does is once that pass is completed, the officials have buzzers, like sort of sound makers in their hand, and they will sound that buzzer when that pass is made, and that gives the goaltender an audio cue that the puck is now going to be coming at the net. And basically what you'll see the goalies do when that happens, they'll immediately try and sort of pick up where the puck is to their left or their right, and they'll drop down into a butterfly stance.
Wow.
Okay.
If they're not fast enough, you'll see some goals coming in from the blue line because they'll just come right along the ice and they'll score 5-hole. But otherwise, it's a very similar game. The puck is bigger. The puck is probably, I'd say, 5 times bigger than a normal puck. It's metallic. It's got some ball bearings inside it, so that when it is moving, when it's hit, when a pass is received, things like that, you hear the bearings moving inside that puck. But otherwise, it's 5 players, 5 skaters aside, 2 goalies, a couple referees. There's penalties. It's passionate. Those Canadian championships, when you've got the elite players playing against each other, it's amazingly passionate. You get some pretty high spirits in those games, and they're a lot of fun to watch.
I can tell you're passionate about it just the way you're talking about it. I could see a smile coming to your face at the end there. Like that passion's there for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just seeing the game grow the way we have is something that I know we're all proud of.
For sure.
Yeah, speaking about passion, we've done some research, and we found, you naming some articles with the Invictus Games, and for many of us, the Invictus Games are something that we're maybe not too familiar with. So can you tell us about, not only your role, but the mission of the Invictus Games?
So the Invictus Games is a project that Prince Harry from the British royal family started a few years back. And his whole goal with that was to essentially bring together former military members, former first responders, police officers, and people who had, because of injuries, were no longer we're dealing with a disability of some kind. So it brings them together through sport. But it also, what I love about it is it brings together some people who thought that maybe once they became a person with a disability and suddenly they had a leg amputated below the knee, or they had an arm amputated at the elbow, that they were dealing with, depression, anxiety, dealing with the idea that they were never going to play sports again. And it brings them together with other athletes who help them along, encourage them, share their stories about how they sort of triumph through those same sort of feelings and those same sort of downtimes. And so my involvement with the Invictus Games, I got a chance to do some PA announcing for both cycling events and wheelchair basketball. And again, the cycling, it's more of an individual sport. When you get into the so it was competitive.
Yeah.
But once you get into the wheelchair basketball, you really start to see that camaraderie. You see that sort of team competitiveness, that pack mentality. And I got to tell you, I had a little bit of experience with wheelchair basketball. I'd actually tried it once before with the men's national team at a media exhibition. And so I mean, tremendous respect for the athleticism it takes to play wheelchair basketball.
I could only
But to see two teams going at it and watching the ability it takes to play that game up close was just unbelievable.
Highest level.
Yeah, it absolutely was fantastic to watch. And what was, there was the sort of the celebrity aspect of it too for me. With the cycling, I was doing it with a former member of the U.S. Postal Team, cycling team. Okay. And right now I'm drawing a blank on his first name, but his last name was Andrew. He was a teammate of Lance Armstrong at those Tour de France's, and he was the first guy to sort of be a whistleblower about Lance Armstrong's steroid use.
Wow.
So that was pretty amazing to spend a couple of days with him and just hear stories and sort of pick his brain on that. But I also got the opportunity throughout that event to introduce Prince Harry a few times. And I got a couple of opportunities to introduce Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
Wow.
Because they were at the events as well. Got a nice photograph with Joe Biden. So now that, at the time of this recording, the certification of his electoral college vote is ongoing. We'll see how that goes.
We'll see how it turns out.
But my assumption is that on January 20th, he will be sworn in. And then my hope is to send that photo off to the White House. And I'd like to get that signed. I've
that'd be awesome.
Never met a U.S. president before. And of course, he was a former vice president at that point. And get my picture taken with him. But it was a great event to be a part of. I met some tremendous athletes. I witnessed some tremendous sports, and I was so grateful to have had the opportunity to be part of the Invictus Games in Toronto.
So it sounds like you've been involved in a lot of everything, be it from wheelchair basketball to NHL hockey. So I'd love to ask you this question. I was going to ask it just about hockey, but you've been involved in so many sports. I think it would be a shame not to hear your opinion on just this in general. Is how can we grow? And it's a really big question. How can we grow and get more eyes on sports everywhere? Because we had Digit Murphy on to talk about women's hockey, and she had some great ideas. And we've heard some from college players as well. We've heard from a CFL player about how they want to grow the game. But kind of as like a sports, you're mixed into everything. How would you, as a whole, get more eyes on sports that don't necessarily get eyes on it?
Well, I can speak to my involvement with blind sports in this country as well as youth sports. I mean, I've been a youth baseball coach for 25 years, and that's always been important to me. And for that, the biggest part of growing Uh, that game, as far as I'm concerned, has been at times the success of the Blue Jays, because the more the Blue Jays are successful, the more kids want to play ball. But it's also on the strength of volunteers and people being out there, drawing kids in and making it possible for kids to play sports. I mean, the cost of playing sports can be extremely prohibitive.
Yeah.
So, anybody who stands up and allows for kids to play sports and to not have money be an impediment, that's a huge part of growing the game.
For sure.
You talk about the women's game, same deal. Giving it its due, giving it its coverage, giving it money to be able to run leagues properly. It makes no sense to me that we want to encourage women's professional sports, but we're not going to support it financially. Then how it's going to be on life support forever if we're not there to back it financially.
Right.
And with blind hockey, I mean, I've seen it when the Canadian Blind Hockey Association first started out, there were 4 teams in Canada. I believe there are now 14 teams across the country. And we're also seeing, thanks to the efforts of guys like Luca DeMontis and Matt Murrow with the Canadian Blind Hockey Association, who have developed partnerships in the United States and throughout Europe. You're seeing more and more international events happening. So last year, I got a chance to be a part of the broadcast of a Canada-USA series that happened in Ottawa. They had a series down in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania the year before that. And so the American game is growing. USA Hockey has jumped on board and is backing that national team and supporting it. I'd love to see Hockey Canada do the same thing here. Get on board, bring blind hockey into the fold as part of Hockey Canada. Right.
Yes.
If we're really going to talk about hockey being for everyone, then let's get everyone involved. Let's get everyone under the same umbrella. So I think there have been a lot of really great endeavors and a lot of efforts to continue to grow sports. But the big thing is to keep growing it at the grassroots, because without those grassroots, there's nobody to make it to those pro levels. So start local, start in your community, and build up from there.
Love it.
That's amazing. So I know Josh as well. We've learned so much about you. We love your story. And now we've heard so much. I mean, you taking pictures with Joe Biden. I want to hear your opinion and your advice because, as Josh and I, we're in sports management, but we always dream of working with MLSE or the Raptors. What kind of advice would you give to us just not to lose faith in something that's so hard to get a good job in these days?
I mean, when I first broke into sports broadcasting, when I broke into announcing for sports, a lot of it has just been like luck and timing. But it came because the opportunities that I got, especially early on, came because I spent a lot of time sometimes working for nothing,
Right.
sometimes working for little money. And in a lot of instances, almost making my own breaks. So what I always tell people and young people who are getting into any type of business is sometimes you need to have the initiative to go after and create some of your own breaks. And the best example I have of it is how I ended up with the Maple Leafs. So in 2014, I heard that the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens, Toronto and Montreal, were going to be co-hosting the World Junior Hockey Championship.
Okay.
So I called up Hockey Canada, knowing that, because I didn't know anybody at MLSE. And I knew that whenever the World Juniors were held in Canada, the public address announcer that they had was English, and they always had a second public address announcer to do the announcements in French. And that is a requirement that Hockey Canada has with all of its events. So I called them up and said, hey, listen, I speak both languages fluently. Are you guys going to hold auditions?
Nice.
And they said, yes, we are. Send us a tape. and we'll get back to you. So I did. They got back to me. I got an audition. I won the job. And that was my foot in the door with MLSE. Out of that event, the Canadian national men's soccer team was holding a couple of World Cup qualifying games in Toronto. They needed a bilingual announcer. They called TFC. TFC said, well, our announcer is not bilingual, but the Maple Leafs had a guy doing the World Juniors last year. He's bilingual. Let us give him a call. We'll get back to you. Next thing I know, I'm doing a couple of World Cup qualifying games.
Sorry, what teams did they play? Do you remember?
Boy.
Okay,
One
I mean,
was
I love the World
it was
Cup, so.
Dominica.
Okay.
Dominica. And the other one, I'm drawing a blank. I don't remember. Too far
good.
back. But then out of that, I'm talking to a friend, and it turns out she has a friend who said, hey, how'd you like that World Junior Hockey Championship? I got to go to a game. And my friend said, oh, well, I know the public address announcer. And this other friend says, oh, he was fantastic. Get him in touch with me because I'm doing the hiring of announcers for the Pan Am Games.
There you go.
The next thing I'm doing, announcing for the men and women's baseball at the Pan Am Games. And then within a few months of that, I get a call from the Maple Leafs asking me if I want to audition for the PA announcer job for the Maple Leafs. So if you go to from 2014 to 2016, every one of those breaks came because I made that initial call to Hockey Canada and got myself an audition for the World Junior Championships. So if I don't make that call, chances are I'm not getting that audition with the Maple Leafs, and I'm not doing the job that I'm doing now, which is the greatest job in hockey as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not getting those other opportunities that came along the way, the Pan Am Games, World Cup qualifying soccer games, and I got a second World Junior Championship out of that once I started with the Maple Leafs. So if I don't make that first break myself, make that phone call, show that initiative myself, none of the other things happen. And so that's why I say to people, sometimes it's not just about seeking out the opportunity that is, on a job description or on a job website. Sometimes it's about digging a little bit deeper, scratching the surface a little bit yourself, and making your own breaks, because it worked for me.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And I want to highlight that making your own breaks is something that stood out from that story. But I think most importantly is that what got you through the door is the bilingual ability that you had.
Yeah.
So how did you do that? Like, where did you grow up, or did you learn the French, or how did that happen?
So I grew up in Ottawa. My mom was French. Her whole family was French. So all my schooling from kindergarten right through graduating high school was all in French. University was the first time that I ever ended up going to school in English, though I did take some French classes while I was at Carleton University. But I spoke French. My grandparents, I grew up next door to my grandparents. They were French. So we've always been a very bilingual home. And growing up in Ottawa, I mean, that's just what you do for the most part. A lot of people grow up bilingual because so many people end up in public service jobs where the bilingualism is a huge asset and in many cases is required for advancement. So, not that I was necessarily myself going to be seeking out a government job, but my parents knew that it was going to be a tremendous advantage. And certainly coming to Toronto and having opportunities like the Invictus Games, Pan Am Games, World Junior Hockey Championship, it opened up so many doors for me. And thus, as you saw there, really ends up being the first step towards becoming the announcer for the Maple Leafs.
That's awesome. I love that. So I was on your Instagram. I sent you a message, and then I pressed back, and I see a photo there of a Buffalo Bills player flossing his teeth. And I go, we're going to get along well because he's also a Bills fan. So let's hear it. How are they going to do this weekend? How far are they going to go? What do you think?
Well, I had a long conversation or Facebook exchange with a former Toronto sports reporter the other day, who said that the Buffalo Bills are not a Super Bowl caliber team. And I disagree with him from the standpoint of, I think this is a team that could get to a Super Bowl and be a Super Bowl caliber team. Whether or not they have yet gained the experience that they need to take the last step to become Super Bowl champs, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I don't think I kind of subscribe rather to the old adage of, any given Sunday or Saturday, or this year, really, it's been any day of the week, right? Depending on COVID. So on any given game day, I think the Buffalo Bills have proven that they can play with pretty much anybody. And
I agree.
the ones that they did lose this year, they sort of pulled a sideshow Bob in some of those, where they stepped on the face numerous times and got it to the face and just kept doing it. So, but if you look
against the Cardinals with that,
never forget the Cardinals loss,
last minute one.
I can't even. That is such a scab you just picked at, because
sorry,
3-on-1.
I know.
Jump ball, and someone doesn't come down with that. I was just devastated by that one.
Every safety's batting that out of the air.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think that, given the way they've played in the last 2 months of this season, they're a team that I can't see them just being written off the page. Like, I really think they can beat anybody in the AFC, and as long as they play within their own, stay in their lane, play within their means, and Josh Allen isn't trying to do the impossible. And certainly if they're completely healthy, that's really going to help a lot. But just the offense of this team, the defense has played adequately, but the offense has been out of this world for the last, 8 of 9 weeks.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal.
And to me, like, it just tells me that they are firing on all cylinders. And I don't think I think they're a well-coached team, and I don't think that they're a team that necessarily reads their own headlines. It's tremendous coach they've got in Sean McDermott. I got a buddy down in Buffalo. He coaches girls softball. He coaches his daughter's team, and McDermott's daughter is on this team as well. So he talks to the coach all the time. And he said, the one thing about this guy is it's all about the team.
Right.
There really is no individual thing. There are certainly individual successes and numbers and records and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's about the team's success. And he's done a masterful job of selling all these players. I mean, think about Stephon Diggs and what people were saying about him as a teammate in Minnesota last year.
Yeah.
That like, he was just a bad seed,
right,
and just individual, not about the team at all. And you talk to anybody in Buffalo about him this year, like, this guy's fantastic. Yeah. He's the ultimate team guy. So that to me says that there are elements within that team that may have led to a bit of a conversion there that convinced him that team first is best. And I think it starts with Sean McDermott. I think he's got these guys bought into it, and that spells good things as far as I'm concerned. So I think they win against Indianapolis this weekend. I think they win their next game at home. What happens in an AFC championship game and what happens beyond that, I don't know.
Right.
But I certainly think they've got the ability to get there.
Love it. I hope they go all the way. I want to see them win it. It'd be great. I just think the only thing that kind of stings about it is that stadium can't be full for the game, because that fan base would be going crazy. And if you
but think about it. They went 13-3 without fans in the building.
Yeah.
Pretty much anywhere. So, I know that they want to do it for that town, but I don't, I got into this with this guy about home field advantage. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm sure home field during a pandemic with no fans. I said, well, have you ever been to Buffalo in January? Are you kidding me? Of course there's home field advantage. There's the comfort of being in your own stadium, the comfort of waking up in your own bed, knowing the route to the stadium, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So I think that plays a big part in it. I think the fact that they get 2 home playoff games potentially is huge. And I believe in these guys. And listen, you weren't around the last time they lost those 4 straight Super Bowls.
Nope.
I was there. I was there, and it was devastating. Oh, yeah. So to finally see these guys and knowing, all my friends in Buffalo who are Bills fans and are Sabres fans, been long suffering Bills and Sabres fans. I don't know how soon the Sabres will be turning things around for them, but I'm absolutely thrilled that the Bills have turned it around for the city of Buffalo, because they're just such great people there. Yeah. They're just so genuine. I love them and I miss them. I haven't been able to be in Buffalo since like November of 2019. I can't wait to get back.
Yeah.
And certainly get back to football games, but the success of this football team has meant a lot to fans like me and certainly fans in Buffalo.
Nice.
That's amazing. I'm so glad we got your opinion on something, outside of hockey and the Leafs, especially if with passion. But I can't let you go here. I watched an interview, so I don't want you to repeat your answers. I know you your first game was the introductory on like the 20-something jerseys for the Maple Leafs on 2016, and there's been some playoff instances since then. What is your top 2 then? What's your most memorable games? Maybe aside from those.
Okay, so aside from the jersey retirement and
like the first playoff stint.
Well, certainly the outdoor game. That was 2 days where we did the alumni game on the one day where we thought for sure Chris Draper and Gary Roberts were going to drop the gloves.
I remember I was there. I was in the arena for that, and everybody was like, what?
Is this serious? Is this happening?
We were wondering, like, was that for real? And then you talk to them post game, and it's like, yeah, that was for real. So that was pretty remarkable. Yeah. And certainly the next day, having a jam-packed BMO Field. I remember telling my wife, I got home and I said, what a day. I got to introduce the commissioner of the National Hockey League, Wayne Gretzky, Brian Adams, who did the sort of the intermission show, and then introduced the 2 teams to play in this outdoor game. I mean, you got announcers who would like call it a career right then and there.
Yeah.
So that was pretty remarkable. And I'd been to an outdoor game before. The very first one in the American Hockey League between Binghamton and Syracuse. I was at that game. I also got a chance to be part of the broadcast when Syracuse played Utica in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. Okay. Nice. So I've been to some pretty cool events like that, but to have the Leafs in Toronto at home that way, that was just remarkable.
Matthews in overtime and everything, right?
Absolutely. And like anytime you get a chance to see that guy score, I mean, all of those games go up on your all-time list. He's just such an exciting guy to watch. Right?
You think Matthews is over or under 60 points this year?
I don't know. I mean, 56 games. Who knows what goes?
It's like the common question. I don't want to know. I don't want to. We're huge Austin Matthews fans. Trust me.
Yeah. I wouldn't even dare. I wouldn't even dare guess. All I know is every single time I've got an opportunity to sit there and watch that guy play, like my job, for the most part, if you were to break it down percentage wise, I spend a large part of my time at a game actually watching the game.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine.
And it's hard sometimes to not get so engrossed in the game that you forget that, hey, I got a job to do here, by the way, right? Like I got to get back to what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And when you watch the guy's puck handling skills, how he skates, how he can just hit the gas and leave opponents, in the rearview mirror, it's unbelievable to watch. And like, it was a no-brainer for me that the first jersey I got once I joined the team was a number 16, because it was my first season. But when I bought a jersey, I put 34 Matthews on it. Like, it's just the guy's outstanding. I've got a signed puck on the shelf here in the sports room, and he's just a tremendous athlete to watch. He's just so talented. It's unreal. And we got great talent wall to wall.
Oh yeah.
But with Austin Matthews and the way he broke into the league, 4 goals first game. I mean,
I know you wish that was in Toronto.
What do you do for an encore, right? Like, it was a crazy debut, and he's just been thrilling to watch ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember just one last thing here before we let you go. I was at the what did they call it? It was the one versus Carolina that was like 8-6.
The next gen game, our very first next generation game.
Yeah. Yes, it was 8-6. And my dad, about halfway through, I think when Carolina took the worst timeout ever, then Marner just went down and scored. My dad turns to me and he goes, "Do you think the PA announcer's getting tired yet?" And I went, "He's probably loving this just as much." And I was like, "Oh boy!" So, but that
trust me. There've been a handful of games over the 4 seasons that I've done this, where, like, my score sheet that I use has, I think I've got 11 slots for goals, and only a handful of times have I ever filled it or exceeded it. And I've made the same joke every time, where I tell my boss that I want to renegotiate my contract. I want to be paid by the goal and not by the game, because there was a lot of extra work in there tonight. But my analysis of that is the same every time. As long as the Maple Leafs are the ones that end up with the most goals, I don't care if you've got me announcing 20. As long as we finish with one more than the other guy and we got the W, I'll announce all night long. It is my pleasure to do it.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I'm going to say my thanks before Josh signs us off, but I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk with us. And I know you deal with a lot of things outside of the Maple Leafs that will still take your time through the pandemic without the Leafs playing. And so we really appreciate your time and the voice you bring in the rink. I've been there since 2018, so I know it's you. I know that I can put the face in there, and I really hope that we can just get back into the rink, and now I can hear that guy and know that I talked to him.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we will be back soon. Mike, I'm just going to hit stop on the recording, and we'll just say thank you off.